Hello, welcome to the OK Football Show with me, Phill Macbeth-Seath. Today we'll be looking ahead to our game on Saturday against Millwall, and I will be speaking to Omer from the At That Millwall podcast. First and foremost, I need to give a shout out to our audio partners, Black Star Amplification and Carry On, and our podcast sponsors, The Record Shop in Amersham. If you're a vinyl collector, head down to The Record Shop in Amersham and see if they'll give you a discount. They will do if you're nice to them. So, let's first of all, before we get into the Millwall game, talk a little bit about Luton Town. This international break was much needed. Even the most ardent of fans wouldn't have thought that we'd only have 1 point after four league games. It's been a real struggle. I think there's been some naivety. I think there's been some poor game management. And there's also been a lot of confusion about who comes, who goes. There's been a lot of people that have been begging for signings. And we did make a few. We've even made one during this international break, which I think could be pivotal for us moving forwards. As a replacement for Chirwell Benny, who left for Ipswich Town in an £8 million deal, we've signed Victor Moses, Premier League winning Victor Moses. So the experience that he'll bring us could be absolutely essential. The next 4 games are also very winnable. We've got 12 points up for grabs against Millwall, against Sheffield Wednesday, at Plymouth and Oxford United. So we need to be taking, I would argue, at least 8 points, if not the full 12. But before we get too carried away with ourselves, keep listening. I've got Omer here from the At That Millwall podcast as we look ahead to the 12:30 kickoff away at the Den on Saturday. So, as promised, here's Omer from the At That Millwall podcast. So thank you so much for joining me today, Omer. It's really good to have you on. And like I say, we'll have a chat about how the season's been going. So, basically, first question I wanted to say to you was actually just that, is how do you rate your start of the season? You got 4 points from 4 games. You lost against our rivals, which is probably the only time that you'll ever have a Luton fan supporting Millwall. But you've picked up 4 points with you got an away day draw against Hull, and you've beaten Sheffield Wednesday. So how's the feeling at the Den?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me. Pleasure. It's been a up and down start to the season, really. More off the field, dominating the headlines in the media and in the press, so to speak, with our lack of signings. But we've amended for that towards the end of the window, which coincided with our first win of the season, really. I mean, started off, obviously, against Watford. A lot of that day was around the Matthias Sarkic kind of mural and memorial, because obviously we unfortunately lost him in the summer. And, 2 years in a row, we've had that in the off-season, really, with our chairman last year and Sarkic. Yeah. So I think Neil Harris, the manager, has kind of put a lot of that down to that on that day. Really, the emotion, the rawness of it, all kind of caught up with the players. Obviously, not an ideal start to the season, losing to Watford. Yeah. I really thought, first home game, first game of the season, a real opportunity to go in there and get a good result, but didn't go our way. We went to Bristol City, and it's a real kind of up and down game. We was obviously losing, and then managed to claw it back and be 3-2 up. And then chuck it away to, lose 4-3, really. And that was a real kind of humding of a game, really, and had everything you'd expect. And then, obviously, followed up with the whole game and, a good 0-0 away from home. The key being Tanganga coming back, who was obviously suspended for the first couple of games of the season. And then, obviously, finished off just for the international break with a 3-0 win over Sheffield Wednesday, which was a bit of a shock. Obviously, a nice 3-0 win, 3 goals in the second half. A real kind of, hopefully a sign of things to come. And as I mentioned, I think get the transfers over the line this summer has been tough for us, but we've done that now, and hopefully this set of games before the next international break can kick on, really.
Yeah, I can completely sympathise with you about the transfer situation, mate. It's been a real tricky one for us as well. I mean, we actually added Victor Moses earlier on this week, it's come completely out of nowhere, especially as the transfer window was officially shut. Yes. But it's been a bit of a struggle. I think that there's been a number of teams in the Championship that have just been blown away by the amount of money that people will spend on the gamble to go up. So it's interesting to actually have another Championship side that's in the same boat, so to speak.
Yeah, we pursued our long-term targets, really. I think Coburn was one of our players. We've got him on loan eventually that we pursued all summer. Really wanted him. Tanganga, the signs of positivity are there. But if you listen to the manager's kind of press conferences pre and post games leading up to the Sheffield Wednesday and the close of the window, it was a lot of criticism of, lack of signings, not giving him the tools to do his job. And not normally stuff we normally associate from Neil Harris, really, to criticise the board openly as much as he has done.
Yeah.
But I think, ultimately we know we're a small fish in a big pond, do you know what I mean? And it's like trying to compete against these clubs, you have to wait for the activity to happen and players to sign elsewhere to then get your targets. So, the club kind of stuck at it, didn't really move away from the targets they wanted. And, Coburn got off to a good start against Sheffield Wednesday. So hopefully it pays off and the gamble is, well worth taking, really.
Yeah, I mean, you said about you got Tanganga back from suspension. You had him on loan at the end of last year, didn't you? But yes. I think that's a serious coup for Millwall. And that's not meant to cause any offence. I just think he's a very, very good player, and the fact that you've managed to get him down at the Den, I think that's an absolutely fantastic bit of business.
Yeah, we share that as fans, really. I think, obviously, signing him on loan in January window, we had Joe Edwards as the manager at the time, who worked with Tanganga in the England youth setup, I believe, and kind of had experience of working with the player previously. And I think, that came along kind of out of nowhere, and there was a bit of a shock. Obviously, he had the injuries around him prior to that, and I think he went to Augsburg in Germany, didn't play a competitive game for them, came to us, and then pretty much was in the team for the rest of the season. And Harris came in, simplified things for him a bit, and moved away from a traditional kind of modern day style of play, and then simplified his role. So defend, keep the ball at the back of the net, and I think he thrived on that. And then obviously continued to play for the rest of the season. And I kind of thought that's all she wrote, really, if I'm honest, as a fan. And I think a lot of people shared that opinion. Mill made it clear that, he's available on a free transfer. We're trying our best to get him. We even put a bid into Tottenham, even though he was out of contract. They had a clause to trigger his contract if they wanted to. So I think we agreed to deal with Tottenham to say, look, we really want the player, let it be known. He took his time, and then the start of July, we got the deal done. And a massive coup. I think, we've probably paid quite a big wage for him, but it's a win-win, hopefully, providing he stays injury-free and put that behind him. If he plays really well and we don't really achieve what we want this season, I guarantee they'll be interested in him next season. We can sell him for a tidy profit. And if we achieve what we want to, and potentially, try and be, one of those underdogs in a sense, then we've got a really great player that will be here for a little while longer. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, for me, when I watched him play at Spurs when he was sort of breaking through, he was always one that was a guaranteed yellow card. So it's interesting that you've got him back after a suspension, which is quite ironic. That's the thing that I pick up on him. But he is one of those players where, from Luton's perspective, we've got Ted and Mengi, and it's a similar sort of thing. So he's come from the Man United sort of setup, and he was always seen to be injury prone and always sort of struggling with having a run of games. But he broke into the team last year, and it's one of those ones where we've managed to keep him in this transfer window. But the reality of it is that we're looking at a serious profit, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I say, I think if you get Tanganga going, he's an exceptional player, and if you don't achieve the goals that align with his goals, then you make a huge tidy sum off of him. So fair play to you, absolutely fair play. I think it's a great bit of business.
Yeah, so, I think on the back of that as well, I think our chairman this week or last week put a statement out, kind of addressing the transfer window, and I think we've not normally been this kind of club to have a model, in a sense, to identify young players, sign them and try to sell them for a profit. That kind of, Brentford done it so well when they got promoted in the past under Benham. And I think that's kind of where we're shifting now, using terminology of being a selling club, which, as a fan, you might not always want to hear. But in reality, we're a club with, 13,000, 14,000 average gate. You're not going to compete against these clubs that are spending with parachute payments coming down. Yeah. So you boys are quite fortunate to have that now after last season.
Yeah, we are,
I think, that's kind of what we're up against, really. So to compete against that on a consistent basis is quite difficult, and now it's a real clear shift to this is our approach. If we hopefully get where we want to get, it's great, but in the long term we're trying to secure our future. And I mean, we sold Fleming this window to Burnley for a loan of obligation to buy £7 million is the rumoured fee. So it's trying to find these investments, buy cheap, sell high, as they always say, and easier said than done, but hopefully that's where we're going to now.
Yeah, definitely, and there are sort of parallels with Luton and Millwall. Like I say, we've always been a selling club as well. Like you say, we're in a very fortunate position at the moment because we've got the parachute payments, and then we don't know where the money's gone. But that's another podcast entirely. So going back to Tanganga though, so has he been playing alongside Jake Cooper at the back? Is he been playing as the centre two of a four, or has it been a slightly different formation? What's the setup at the back of Millwall's team?
Yeah, I think Harris came in and went straight back to back four last season, which obviously kept us up and simplified the roles for them. And it's kind of continued into this season, really. We had Tanganga missing for the first 2 games of the season and had Sean Hutchinson there, who's been a long-term servant, re-signed on a deal this season to kind of be a backup. It just didn't work. Obviously, Hutchinson's about 33, 34. Cooper's tall, and not really quick, and we got really found out against Bristol City in particular. And Tanganga plays next to Cooper. They complement each other well. Obviously, Tanganga's got the kind of speed and obviously good ability on the ball. Cooper's going to win every header that's thrown at him, and kick, bite, and all sorts of behind that really. And I think they complement each other well. It's a back four normally. You've got Ryan Leonard on right back, who was our fans player of the season last year, and then Joe Bryan typically plays at left back. So it's a back four setup, old school. Normal way of playing football.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've put it down. I brought up Jake Cooper just purely because he's been with you for forever, and it's one of the games where when we play each other, I always think how effective are our front two actually going to be? Because usually I'd be speaking to an opposition podcaster going, "Adebayo might cause you problems. He's a tall, lanky fella up front. He can run. But Jake Cooper, he's not going to get beaten in the air like you say. And then when you think about his partner Tanganga. I would look at Carlton Morris and think that he would outstrengthen most centre backs as well. So, but I think you're very well matched up against us, and that's why I think it could be quite tight. So it's going to be interesting. I really think it's going to be interesting. I think it could be a tight game, and I'm not necessarily too confident that our two strikers are going to get anything that's going to change the serious lull that they're in. But I'll keep my fingers crossed. You'll probably hope for that to continue. But the one player I was going to ask about Omer was to me he's your standout player so far, and it's Duncan Watmore. I think he's scored 4 goals already. He's got a couple of assists. And what I was going to ask you was he's been around. He sort of broke through, didn't he? Quite young, and He's been a decent player, don't get me wrong, but is there anything that's happened that's different this season, or has he just sort of come of age? Has he been playing a slightly different role? Is it just sheer good form?
Yeah, I mean, it shocked us as well, to be honest. I think, since we've signed him, we signed him in January 22, perhaps, under Gary Rowett, and he's always been a 60-minute player, really, and someone that's kind of struggled with his fitness. And I think that's been the case for a long time, even going back to his Sunderland days. And we signed him from Middlesbrough. I remember speaking to a Borough fan at the time, and he was like, "You'll do well to get 60 minutes out of him," and that's his lot, really. And he kind of, the engine blows up in a sense. And I think it surprised me, like this summer round, I think, under Neil Harris, he's been given a free kind of role on the left-hand side. He works his nuts off, really. He's a proper old-school winger, likes to take players on and, kind of beat men when he can. He's got a bit of pace on him. He's not the quickest, but, he's very consistent in what he does. And I think Harris has said into the start of the season, he's kind of challenged Watmore, saying, you can be a 90-minute player, you can improve on things and you can get better. And I think what Harris does is, very well, is he might have his tactical flaws that maybe people might criticise him for in the past, but he's a real man manager and will get the best out of players, the most he can get. And I think Watmore's fallen into that category, really, where he's got a manager that gives him the kind of freedom to play, but also work hard and apply his trade, really. And I think that's kind of been the match made in heaven there. And I mean, I think scoring 4 in 4, no one expected that. It's the nature of the goals too, like Bristol City away, a great volley on the swivel with his right foot. Yeah. And, just kind of always been in and around it, really. And obviously 4 goals in 4. He's been our standout. It's been a shock. I wouldn't have expected at the start of the season Watmore to be sitting here with 4 on 4, but long may it continue, really. I think it's just, it's a match made in heaven for us at the minute, really.
Yeah. So with that in mind, like who did you have pegged as like your potential star player for this season? Who was the hopes being pinned on?
Early doors into the window, we signed Macaulay Langstaff from Notts County.
Yeah, prolific down there as well, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he scored 42 in the Conference National, all goals from open play, no set pieces, no penalties. Scored 27, I think, in League Two, so got Golden Boot back to back. And we signed him for, I think, just north of 500,000. And at the time, they were disappointed for the fee they got, their fans as such. And obviously, it's a hard jump, from League Two to the Championship, but I wasn't, from the get-go, I was expecting him to kind of obviously transition, which is what he is at the moment, but I kind of was thinking, there's our goal scorer already. Can we? Yeah. But the doubt was, can we give him the service? And obviously, we've got players in the wide areas now, the likes of Watmore, the likes of SA. But yeah, I was thinking Langstaff's that kind of striker that we needed and missed, really, to score the goals. But the other player really is, who's actually hit the headlines as well, is one of our own, Romain SA. Signed a new deal just before the window shut. He's 19 years of age, come from our academy. On the right-hand side, so the opposite flank to Watmore, who's a left footer, likes to take players on, and is kind of a real raw talent. And he currently is playing with England on the 20s in international break. So, yeah, I think SA has definitely been one that we've all been excited about. He seems to be kicking on a bit more, but yeah, Langstaff is the one that's not yet done it yet. So we'll see.
It'll be interesting with Langstaff because I mean, those of us that sort of have a bit of a longer memory, Luke Gregory ended up at Millwall, didn't he? And I remember when we were back down in the conference, we had Andre Gray, and Luke Gregory was the only geezer that could outscore him, and he ended up at Millwall, and he forged a really good career in the end. But it took him quite some time to sort of settle into that level, didn't it? So, I mean, fingers crossed for Millwall moving forwards that you'll get your money's worth out of him, because he has, like I say, he's been prolific. It's just a case of finding his feet, I think.
That's it, definitely. I think with Gregory in particular, it was a similar story. It took him a while to get going. I think he got 9 or 10, and we got relegated that season. Went down to League One, and it's coincided with Neil Harris coming back again, because here we go, Neil Harris. But Harris had that similar trajectory. I think he came from Cambridge City at the time in the late 90s, and obviously went on to be our record goal scorer, a couple of spells as a player. And I think, Harris has kind of got that track record, knows what it takes to be a Mill striker, got, his arm around Gregory. And I think that's what a lot of us were thinking would happen this season. And it's only 4 games into the season. It's going to take time to transition. But with Langstaff, I think he's got the right kind of manager there that's been there, done it at our club, which, our fan base at times can be a bit, touchy at times with our own, even, if the players ain't putting 100% work in and showing their talent, really. So, yeah, I mean, remains to be seen. I'm hoping he gets his opportunity, really, because he's not really started a game in the league yet. But, yeah I think hopefully he comes good, and we'll wait and see.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to keep an eye on him, because, like I say, it is a big jump nowadays, isn't it? So we'll keep our eyes on him. But so, what are your sort of expectations for the season? There's a last sort of question for you about Millwall this season. Like, is it a case of a sort of a backdoor playoff push, or is it a case of consolidating in mid-table again after tricky situations last year, or is it a case of go hell for leather and see what you can achieve?
I think because of the off-season nature of it, like Sarkic was our goalie, obviously, like I mentioned at the start of my segment here with you, he passed away and was obviously tragic. And I think that kind of rocked the plans for pre-season and our recruitment, because we went from having Bart Bielkowski, who was here for a few years, as our backup. He left. Sarkic, obviously, no longer with us. And then, so that kind of ripped up the recruitment plans in a sense, I think, and where our priorities lied. And I think that then put us on the back foot a little bit. And I think I've always said going into this season, like, Neil Harris has only got another year left on his deal. He was brought in as a firefighter to keep us up last year. Yeah. He deserves the opportunity to have a free hit this year. And where that takes us to, time will tell, really. And I think we're seeing signs that, the club's trying to shift in a different direction to maybe what Harris would like to work in. I think, what's the expectation? I mean, just staying up for me as a fan is the bare minimum. Yeah. But I do think there is some quiet confidence that we can be, ruffle some feathers and try and, sneak into maybe a top half finish, and who knows where that takes us to. But I think the bare necessity, especially after the outlay we spent this summer, I think it has to be remain in the division, and then anything else, see where you're at, I suppose, come February, March time, really.
Yeah, I mean it's a brutal league. Let's be honest, and it's one of those ones where there are. It's like Premier League B. Like there's not many teams, and I'm not trying to poke fun here. There are not many teams that don't have the benefit of Premier League money. So. Expectations sort of do need to be tempered if you've not got that financial backing, and it's bloody tough, like really, really tough. And I think fair play to you for sticking around in the Championship seriously though, and like I say, it's not meant to be offensive. It's just it's a bloody hard league, So
I think this is so up there. I think this is our 8th season in the Championship, and you're right. Like there's teams that come up and down League One, and you kind of do disappear. But for us to remain at this level with our budget, it is remarkable. I think our record spend is £2.5 million, and it is getting more competitive. Teams are going up, coming back down with the money as such as well. Yeah. It's a real difficult league to compete in, and you need to find your angle. And I think that's what we're trying to move to now, trying to have our competitive edge. But you're right. I'm not laughing because I think you're gloating. I think I completely agree. It's such a tough division, and for us to remain where we are, it has been an achievement in itself, really.
Yeah. Yeah, and like I say, it's credit where credit's due. Even though it's your own club, it is just one of those things where you just have to sometimes say, "Fair enough, this is our level. It's tough to stick there, but here we are." So, lastly, Omer, then we got at the OK Football Show. We've got a weekly feature called the Sluga Six. So we do an opposition preview member takes part in our predictor league. So we've got 6 fixtures. It's double points for the Millwall versus Luton score. And accumulatively, all of the opposition podcasters, they're playing for a donation that we'd make to Luton Town's food bank. So if you guys win, then we'll be making a healthy donation to them at the end of the season. So as best as you possibly can, try to remain some sensibility. But I've got 6 fixtures to ask you. I've got my pen at the ready. So the first one is our fixture. So how do you think it's going to be? Millwall versus Luton.
I think the international break, obviously, after a big 3-0 victory, it's a bit untimely, but we go well at home under this manager. He gets us going, and that will be key. You know, we had that defeat against your near neighbours, Watford, your nearest and dearest, and I think we got that win against Sheffield Wednesday. Now it's a case of, can we back it up and go again? And I do believe we will. I think it'll be a tough game. I know you guys haven't had the best start to the season.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'd be desperate after 2 weeks away to kind of come back and have a real good go at it. So I think we're going to nick it. I think we'll win 2-1. I think
2-1.
We'll score a couple. I think it might be 1-1, maybe going into the last half hour, and hopefully we can suck the ball into the back of the net in our home end, really, and win 2-1, and the fans play a part, really.
I think that's reasonable. I think that's a reasonable shout, to be fair. The next one is Leeds versus Burnley. Mm-hmm. What you got down for that?
I've gone for a Desmond 2-2 draw. I think obviously Leeds at home, quite a good side, and Burnley, obviously going to do well this year. So 2-2.
Yeah, lovely. Oxford versus Stoke.
Gone sit on the fence again. I've gone for a 1-1 draw this time. Obviously Oxford new to the league, at home again, and Stoke tough opposition this league. So 1-1 draw. Yeah,
Stoke are one of those awkward ones where I never know what to say, and Oxford have been really quite good since coming up. So I think that's probably a decent shout as well, to be honest. Then we've got our beloved neighbours. I've actually put them into the Sluga 6 this week. I'd usually try to avoid them, but Watford versus Coventry, Omer.
I'm sure your fans, your audio listeners would love to hear this. I've gone for a 1-0 away win, Coventry to win 1-0. I love Mark Robins. I think he's the most underrated manager in English football, if I'm totally honest. I think the job he's done there. He's got a bit of criticism of late, I've seen on social media as such, but I think and hope that he turns it around there, and I think Coventry win 1-0.
Yeah, I think he's a top manager. I think he's been very unfortunate with how things have gone over the last couple of seasons, but he'll turn it around. I've got no doubt about it. Top side. Blackburn versus Bristol City.
I've gone for a home 2-1 win, so Blackburn to win 2-1 in that game.
Lovely. And then finally, Derby versus Cardiff. Cardiff are our favourites at the minute, because they're the only ones keeping us off the bottom of the table. What you got?
I've gone for a 0-0 draw. A bit of a boring one, but I think Derby and Cardiff, both. I think Derby got a really good win for the international break, but I'm going for a 0-0 draw there.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Omer, thank you so very, very, very much for joining me this evening and talking to me. Just before we go, do you want to give a shout out in regards to your socials, so that some of the Hatters can follow you and keep up to date with what's going on at Millwall?
Absolutely, please do. We're at That Mill Pod across all socials, so Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. We do YouTube, and also obviously on audio listeners, we do a Friday night live stream as well. I don't know what time this is going out, but we do preview the game ourselves on Friday over on YouTube, which is a live stream. So encourage you guys to get involved and give us your views on Luton by all means. So find us on YouTube. Top man. Thank you so much, Omer. I really do appreciate your time. Thanks again. Absolute pleasure. No problem. All the best. Take care. So, there you have it. Millwall think that they're going to beat us 2-1 at the weekend. Let's see if we can try and stop that from happening and get 3 points ourselves away at the Den. Really interesting to hear from Omer and hear about some of the star players that he's identified, with SA in particular looking like he's going to be a little bit tricky for us. So we'll see how we fare. I said in that podcast about the fact that it might be a difficult day for Adebayo and Morris. Let's hope that it's not. Let's hope that we've got a bit more nous and a bit more tact about us to make sure that we do get them some goals. And even if it's just a penalty, let's just get them off the mark and get our dynamic duo up top going. So thank you so much for listening to this opposition preview. Like I say, our sponsors are Black Star Amplification and Carry On, and our other podcast sponsor is the Record Shop in Amersham. Go check them out. Check us out on our socials at OK Football Show on Twitter. Check us out on YouTube. Like, subscribe, and engage with us. As much as we get a load of abuse, we enjoy it in a weird way. So, thank you very much and take care. Come on, you Hatters.